Good morning, everyone. Let's do some prayers first. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Om Bhur Bhavaswaha Tatsavitravarinyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Nah Prachodayat Asto Ma Sadgamya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamya Mrityorma Mritam Gamya Om Sainavavatu Saino Bhunaktu Saviryam Karvavahi तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहि Om Shanti 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 Om. Okay, let's open our Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And we are in the middle of this section where the question was asked about the Anteryami and the Sutraman. And Rishi Yagyavalkya, he is answering that question in a detail actually. There are several verses where he is part by part about this body. He is telling us that who is the Antaryami there. So we went through all the way up to verse number 18. So let's finish the rest of them also. Yat chakshushi, this is verse number 18. Yat chakshushi tishtam chakshusho antraha yam chakshun ved yasya chakshu shariram yat chakshur antraho yameti eshat atma antaryamihi amritaha. He who dwells in the eye, what is within it? Whom the eye does not know, whose body is the eye, and who controls the eye from within is the inner controller, Antaryami, your own self and immortal. Ya shrotrahe tishtan shrotra antraha yam shrotram na ved yasya shrotram shariram ya shrotra antraha yameti eshat atam antaryami amrita. He who dwells in the ear but is within it, whom the ear does not know, whose body is the ear and who controls the ear from within, is the inner controller, your own self and immortal. And we can see the theme over here in all these beautiful verses. Yo manasihi tishtanya manasoho antraha yam mano na ved yasya mana shariram yo mano antraho yam iti eshat atam antrayamihi amritaha. He who dwells in the mind but is within it, whom the mind does not know, whose body is the mind, and who controls the mind from within, is the inner controller, your own self and immortal. Verse number 21. Yat vachihi tishthan tvachaho antraha yam tvangan ved yasya tvak shriram yat tvacham antraho yametihi eshat atam antaryami amritaha. He who dwells in the skin but is within it, whom the skin does not know, whose body is the skin, and who controls the skin from within, is the inner controller, your own self and immortal. Yo vigyanehe tishtan vigyanam antraha yam vigyanam na ved yasya vigyanam shariram yo vigyanam antraho yameti eshat atam antaryamihi amritaha. He who dwells in the intellect but is within it, whom the intellect does not know, whose body is the intellect and who controls the intellect from within, is the inner controller, your own self and immortal. the last verse of this section. Yo retasi tishtan retsoh antrayam reto na ved yase reta shariram yo ret antraho yameti eshat atam antaryami amrita adrishto drishta अश्रुतः श्रोतः अमतोः मंतः अविज्ञातो विज्ञातः न अन्यो अतो अस्ति द्रष्टः न अन्यो अतो अस्ति हि श्रोतः न अन्यो अतो अस्ति हि मंतः न अन्यो अतो अस्ति विज्ञाता एषत आत्म अंतर्यामी अमृतः अतः अंतर्दात्रम ततः होदालक आरुणि रूप राम इति सप्तम ब्राह्मणम. He who dwells in the organ of generation but is within it, whom that organ does not know, whose body is that organ, and who controls that organ from within is the inner controller, your own self, and immortal. He is never seen, but is the seer. He is never heard, but is the hearer. He is never thought, but is the thinker. He is never known, but is the knower. There is no other seer than he. There's no other hearer than he. There's no other thinker than he. There's no other knower than he. He is the inner controller, your own self, and immortal. All else but him is perishable. Thereupon Udlak, the son of Arun, kept quiet. Beautiful. In fact, the beautiful term does not even describe it. How clearly, how immaculately he explained this. So what are we supposed to do? Meditate. Meditation on the internal ruler with reference to the gods is prescribed in this verse or in these verses. Especially in the first 12 mantras in this section. Meditation on that supreme with reference to all beings is given in the 15th mantra. And meditation on that being with reference to the various parts of the body from the 16th mantra up to the end of this section. So whichever way we can meditate, there's so many different ways Yajnavalkya has described it. So the method of meditation given here on the self as the inner ruler in a most concise and systematic ways Yajnavalkya has given us. It identifies the entire creation, gross also, subtle also, with the self who is shown to pervade them in their entirety as a mass of consciousness. Because we often pay attention to these parts of our body, the eyes, the ears, the skin. But due to the involvement of subject-object distinction in meditation, these mantras, they assert two distinct factors: the self and the objects which it inheres. The self he is declaring again and again to be the inner controller, Anteryami. To some people, it can seem that this involves some other entity over and above the controller, which is subjected to control. In that case, the self becomes the subject who controls, and the entire aggregate of the manifested universe becomes the object controlled. So, in order to avoid this confusion, which can come into our mind, in these mantras, he is declaring him as the absolute intelligence, him, the internal controller, which is present in the organs of perception, the secondless entity not different from the manifested universe. So that's why he says he is the unseen seer. He sees everything, but none can see him. He hears, but none can hear him. He is the real thinker of thoughts, but none can think about him. We all know we have to transcend this gross body. We got to transcend the subtle body also. Gross body can take us to a certain point, and the subtle body to another point. But we have to learn how to transcend them too. He is the knower of everything, but none can know him. So to remove all these presumptions of anything different from him, Yajnavalkya says that other than him, there is no seer, there is no knower other than him. He is the only one. And this cuts at the very root of all possibility of presuming a second entity other than him. In Bhagavad Gita also, Lord Krishna said, there is nothing higher than Paramatma. There's a Atma, there's a Maya, there's a Prakriti, but nothing higher than Paramatma. So just as the clay is the jar, whether we look at the lengthwise or crosswise, inside the jar, outside the jar, it's only the clay. If you look at a piece of cloth, every which way the constitution is done with the thread which it's made up of. Or you can say that different drops of water are non-different from the ocean. Bubbles are water, froth is water, waves are water. Underneath the surface, there's only water. Above it's water. So the same way this self whose nature has been set forth so far is the internal ruler. The immortal self. This is what he is telling Udlak. And if somebody thinks that it's a perishable, he says, no, it's not perishable. That which is eternal is imperishable. This self is imperishable, it is ever existing, it is the infinite existence which cannot allow the existence of anything other to it. Very clearly, with very beautiful examples, he's making his point. And because there cannot be two entities, the assumption of something real and eternal other than they, it is impossible. Because if somebody assumed that it would be unreal, just as any superimposition of name and form, such as a jar, a pot, etc., on clay, is unreal. Because that is perishable. Jar can perish, it can be broken. Clay alone is real in that example. So having heard all about the Sutraman and the Anteryami, Udalak stopped further questioning and resumed his seat. When person understands that everything here is that principle called Antaryami, that one, there is nothing other to it, and if there happens to be something other to it, it should be known to be unreal. Unreal also means non-existent. So that's why Udalak, he accepted this definition or this explanation of Antaryami and Sutraman, and he sat down. Now the next section, that is section 8 of this chapter. And over here, the explanation continues, but the term is used, Akshar Brahma. And this Akshar Brahma, in fact, in Bhagavad Gita, there is a chapter about Akshar Brahma. That the Atma, the self, is the subject of cognition, and it can never be an object, and all that is other to the Atma has no reality. Being a superimposition due to ignorance, we have forgotten it. We think the objects are the subjects. So throughout this great Upanishad, these rishis are making it clear for us in all these sections. The Atma as the eminent self is the only reality. And it has also been established in the course of the exposition of the importance of absolute, that the development of a personal and manifested self is helpful. That's how we meditate. That's why we just take our attention inward and try to see that divine inside us. We don't have to bring the divine from somewhere. Divine is there, but we have forgotten that divinity because we have been more concentrating on the objects. So the knowledge that the universe is the expression of that one non-dual self nullifies the concepts of our empirical conditions superimposed upon the self. Or you can say it in other words, that it has been made clear that the absolute is the inner ruler of the universe. The controlling power in earth, controlling power in water, fire, atmosphere, wind, sky, heaven, moon, stars, ether, darkness and light, all beings and all organs, in fact, in every object and every concept. This is the inner controller. So we come to have the idea of a unity, which is the aim of all philosophical speculations and also intuitional meditations. The entire cosmos, because we can meditate in the microcosm or we can meditate on the macrocosm. So the entire cosmos is set in motion by him. By him, I mean the self, the God, whatever name we give, under a definite, perfectly planned program. It is not just a roll of a dice. This creation was created. There is a definite plan. All phenomena of physical activities and psychological functions are directed by him. But nevertheless, a cosmic view is strongly emphasized in this section. And the self is to be realized as the subjective consciousness. So this present section takes a decisive step forward in this respect. And there are several assertions given over here. And this starts out, this section, again with the Gargi. Because in the section before, Gargi asked the question, she was satisfied, she sat down. Because she was told that you are not supposed to ask that. But she stands up again and asks the question, which is, she wants clarification on that. So let's look at the very first verse. Ath ha vachak वाच ब्राह्मणा भगवन्तो हन्त अहम इमं द्वो प्रश्नो प्रक्ष्यामि तौ चेन्मेह वक्ष्यति न वजातुः युष्माक इमं कश्चित् ब्रह्मोद्यम जेतेति पृच्छ गार्ग इति. Then Gargi, the daughter of Vachkanu, said, Venerable Brahmins, with your permission, I shall ask him 2 questions. If he will answer those questions of mine, then none of you can ever defeat him in expounding Brahma. This is what Gargi is asking over there. He says, can I ask these 2 questions? So Gargi, who is the daughter of Vachkanu, we already saw that before. And you remember this was the court of Janak. And she's requesting a permission to interrogate Rishi Yagyavalkya once more with the 2 questions. And she's saying that if he replied the 2 questions, none among the assembled learned scholars would be able to defeat him in arguments concerning Brahma. Because she is sure that these questions are so deep. If he can answer these, you can see the confidence in this saint, the Rishi. The assembly permitted her to question Yagyavalkya. Because we saw that in the previous section, she was warned by Yagyavalkya against a logical inquiry into the cause of Hiranyagarbha, the ultimate cause of the universe. So that's why he is continuing over here. She's asking not on the basis of logic, but she's asking on the basis of scriptural texts. Okay, so let's see what is she asking now in verse number 2. स हवाच अहम वैत्वा याज्ञवल्क्ये यथा काश्यो भवदेहो वोगपुत्र उज्यम धनुर्धियजम कृत्वा द्वो बाणवन्तौ सम्पन्नातिः व्याधिनो हस्ते कृत्वो उक्तः उपतिष्ठेत् एवमहं तवा द्वाभ्याम प्रश्नाभ्याम उत्पोत्सथाम तो मे ब्रूहुति पृच्छ गार्गिति. She said, Yagyavalkya, I shall ask you 2 questions. As a resident of Benares, or the king of Videha, the son of a heroic line, strings his unstrung bow takes in hand 2 bamboo-pointed arrows that extremely hurt the enemy, and approaches close by. Even so, do I approach you with 2 questions. Answer those questions of mine. And Yajnavalkya said, ask. So over here in this verse, we see that Gargi addressing Yajnavalkya, that she will put 2 questions which he should answer. And what was the nature of these questions? She's saying that they would be a piercing one, like pointed arrows aimed at the enemy by mighty warrior. She's mentioning the princes of Kashi and Videha must have been the best fighters in those days, so that's why she's saying their names. So she's actually comparing her questions to the 2 piercing arrows in the hands of these warriors. Just as they would advance towards their enemies with their unfailing weapons. So she says, I am approaching you, Rishi, with these 2 questions, which are very difficult to answer by even great scholars. And that's when the Yajnavalkya gave his consent to be questioned again by Gargi. So that's what Prich Gargi ite. So he says, do ask me, I'll answer. So let's look at what are these questions. Verse number 3. Sahovac yad udharvam Yajnavalkya diva yad वाक पृथिव्या यदंत्रः ध्यावा पृथि इमे यद भूतं च भवच भविष्ये चेत चक्षते कस्मिन् तदोतं च प्रोतं चेति. She said, Yajnavalkya, what pervades that which they say is above heaven and below the earth, which is heaven and earth as well as between them, and which was, is, and will be. So Gargi asked, on what ground is the Sutraman founded? So she's actually taking his questions to that Sutraman. Because you remember in the previous section, Yajnavalkya said that Sutraman is everywhere. So on what ground is the Sutraman founded? Which is the cause for Hiranyagarbha, the being pervading the whole manifested universe in the form of heaven above, the earth below, and also the intermediate region between the heaven and earth. When we say that Om Bhur Bhavaswaha, so we are saying God is here, there, everywhere. So she is asking the cause of it. In the whole of space, we say God is everywhere. So being eternal, this Hiranyagarbha was in the past, in the present, and will be the future also, we say. That's why we call it eternal. He is the totality of all that exists in space and time. The scriptures say that he is the firstborn. Gargi says very clearly that I want to know what the scriptures say about his cause. Cause of that Brahma. Where did it come from? This is practically the same question raised by Gargi previously. But Yajnavalkya refused to answer. But we can see over here, Gargi, she's an adept in logical argumentation. That's why she's putting the same question, depending solely on inference. And we know that inference is one of the four means of knowledge or proofs according to the science of logic. And we know that the other three are direct perception, analogy, and verbal testimony. So the cause of Hiranyagarbha, who is Ishwar, the unmanifested, the conditioned Brahm, being beyond the phenomenal world, cannot be known through logic, which comes within the realm of the relative conditioned phenomena. So that's why the wise sage flatly refused to answer the question earlier. He almost gave a warning of the utter futility of her attempt to go beyond the phenomena, adopting a means that is within the phenomena. So Gargi now is giving up all logic. She is adopting the traditional method, based her two questions on the scriptures now. And she had got the permission of the whole assembly and Yajnavalkya also. So that's why she is putting her question over here. And Yajnavalkya agreed to answer the two supra-mundane questions, because if we can grasp properly, if we can understood fully, and we can realize by direct experience, a person can have a ultimate liberation. So it's like a pretty deep question she's asking over here. Let's look at verse number 4 also. So, Hovache yad urdhvam gargi diva yad vak prithvya yadantraha dhyava prithvi ime yad bhutam cha bhavach bhavishyam cha tyachakshate akashe tad utam cha protam chetihi. He said, Gargi, the unmanifested ether pervades that which they say is above heaven and below the earth, which is heaven and earth, as well as between them, and which was, is, and will be. So Yajnavalkya replied that the unmanifested is the cause for the manifested Hiranyagarbha, and that this unmanifested pervades the manifested creation. Like a thread which has been woven to make a cloth. It pervades the universe in all the three periods of time, past, present, and future. The time factor is within the realm of the manifested creation. And Hiranyagarbha is referred to as the Sutraman. And the cause of it, which is Ishwar, and is referred to as the unmanifested, and it transcends the space and time. The whole creation, including space, time, and causation, is called a tripod, on which it stands, remains in an unmanifested form in Ishwar. It's almost like a big banyan tree. Not even a banyan tree, but actually infinite number of banyan trees, remaining unmanifested inside one microscopic seed. This cause of Hiranyagarbha is also called Mool Prakriti. Mool Prakriti has these three guns of the Prakriti, the Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas in it. It's also called Maya, which has the subtle powers of veiling the truth, projecting the universe. And Hiranyagarbha is the effect and Ishwar is his cause. And this effect, which is the cosmic prana, the cosmic intellect, and the cosmic mind in the universal aspect, is also called Tejas, with reference to the individual Jeev. And the cosmic causal state is called Pragya, with reference to the individual who manifests himself in the deep sleep state also. So there's really no difference between the universal and the individual, because one does not exist without the other. All phenomenal relations like space and time, cause and effect, individual and the universal, are transcended in Ishwar. The absolute in its conditional aspect as the cause of the universe. Or you can say the manifested creation is referred as Hiranyagarbha. So when he explains like this, that Gargi says again, Sahvach namaste astu yagvalke yo mam etam vyavacha aprasmai dharyah vetihi prichgargitihi. She said, salutations to you, Yagyavalkya, who have fully answered this question of mine. Now hold yourself steady for the other question. And Yagyavalkya says, ask, Gargi. So Gargi was satisfied with the answer to the first question. So that's why she says, I need to have the answer for my second question also. And he says, yes, ask me. So next week, we will see what the second question is and how that second question is being answered also, whether Gargi gets satisfied or not. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti 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 Om. Thank you very much for joining.